There's a theory that the universe could end at any moment. Without warning, without an explosion, everything will just cease to exist. And the scariest part is, we won't even know what happened. How is that possible? Do we have a chance to prevent it? Imagine if such a scenario is actually possible. Why are we still here? What keeps the universe from resetting instantly? And the strangest thing is, scientists admit that this could be a matter of pure chance. So right now, do we exist only because we got lucky?
The solar system is the place humanity knows best, yet it's also the most mysterious part of our cosmic neighborhood. Here are celestial bodies that may possibly harbor organic life. Even if the creatures inhabiting these distant and strange worlds are nothing like us, the very possibility of their existence compels people to study the mysterious planets and moons orbiting side by side with the gas giants more closely. Hubble, hello, subscribe. One of the objects of particular interest to astronomers on Earth is the frozen moon of the giant Jupiter, Europa, a remarkable planet with the smoothest surface of any object in the solar system. Moreover, it never turns away from its formidable neighbor. How do we know this? Mainly thanks to the Galileo spacecraft, Galileo, by the NASA space agency to study Jupiter's moons. What can be said about the probe itself, and how useful was its mission? The spacecraft was launched from Cape Canaveral in 1989, and 6 years later, in 1995, it entered Jupiter's orbit. This spacecraft was groundbreaking. It was the first to drop a probe into the dense atmosphere of the giant planet and to observe the large Galilean moons up close. Galileo stayed near Jupiter until 2003 and transmitted 30 gigabytes of valuable information to Earth. The launch of the spacecraft was repeatedly postponed due to the disaster that occurred in 1986. At that time, the shuttle Challenger with 7 astronauts on board suffered an unexpected crash. But despite everything, Galileo set out on its journey and gave people on Earth a wealth of important information about the worlds surrounding us. So to begin with, let's briefly cover the main points, what the probe looked like and what equipment it had on board. Galileo was 5 meters tall and weighed 2,223 kilograms. It was equipped with 4 antennas and 2 radioisotope generators that produced energy. After all, using solar panels in such distant regions is pointless. The spacecraft's equipment was diverse and had a high efficiency. On board, there were 11 instruments, including a camera, a telescope with a tantalum coating, a photopolarimeter that detects radiation, electromagnetic waves, several spectrometers, and many other devices. So, what did Galileo see during the long flight? The spacecraft began by approaching Gaspra as closely as possible when entering the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, and took a picture of the planetoid. The next was a photo of a grand moment, the impact of Comet Shoemaker-Levy 9, which was impossible to observe from Earth. The only one who saw it firsthand was Galileo, which in July 1994 was on the opposite side of the planet, a whole 1.6 astronomical units away from the giant. And now let's talk about what the probe saw on Europa. Maybe the spacecraft noticed something unusual on the surface of the moon. Hold on a moment. We'll tell you everything in order. Galileo's trajectory was intentionally designed so that it would approach Europa several times at record close distances, from 560 to 201 kilometers. From the images received and sent to Earth on December 16, 1997, NASA specialists created a collage mosaic that clearly shows signs of endogenic activity on the moon. Grooves, lenticulae, lines. According to data from Galileo, in this cold world with temperatures ranging from -160 to -220 degrees Celsius filled with radiation fields 1,000,000 times stronger than on Earth, vast plains predominate, and there are also a small number of ridges and impact craters. This last fact indicates the relative youth of the satellite. But most of all, scientists are most interested in the so-called cracks on Europa. It is believed that they appeared due to fractures in the icy crust. But what triggered these phenomena? Here we come to the most interesting part. It was previously assumed that the cracks appeared due to Jupiter's tidal forces, but there is one oddity. The older lines are somehow oriented in the opposite direction from the giant. What does this indicate? It is likely that Europa's crust rotates much faster than its interior, and the double ridges and strange structures of Connemara chaos, which resemble ice blocks frozen into its surface, are indirect evidence of the presence of a subsurface ocean on Europa. According to astronomers, the most compelling evidence for the existence of a global body of water is precisely the area called Connemara chaos. The scattered, uneven landscape most likely formed as a result of repeated melting of ice and freezing of liquid coming from the depths. Geysers that periodically shoot up at a speed of 700 meters per second to a height of 200 kilometers above the surface of the moon also indicate the presence of water beneath the crust. But many planetary scientists do not believe this theory, claiming that the thickness of the ice on Europa reaches tens of kilometers, so the emergence of liquid from beneath it is unlikely. In any case, if this ever happened, it was extremely rare. How did scientists manage to determine the thickness of the moon's icy crust? Thanks to the Galileo probe, some of the flat-bottomed impact craters were studied. The ice that covered them after the impact is relatively fresh, and astronomers suggest that Europa's crust is 10 to 30 kilometers thick, while the ocean itself reaches a depth of about 100 kilometers, with a volume twice that of Earth's. And finally, the most relevant question, for which further missions to Jupiter's moon are being planned. Is there life in the subsurface ocean? The first counter-argument is the intense radiation environment, which sterilizes the planet and destroys all viable structures, as well as the incredibly harsh conditions that rule out the emergence of organic matter. But there's a catch. We're not talking about the surface of Europa, but about the subsurface ocean. For example, on Earth, there are entire colonies of creatures that live comfortably in deep-sea volcanic vents, where not a single ray of light penetrates. And the lives of hardy mollusks depend on the process of hydrogen sulfide oxidation. Therefore, extremophiles could very well inhabit Europa's ocean. And what about large anaerobic organisms? Although Galileo has not yet found any clear signs of life on the moon, scientists have suggested that over millions of years, the ocean became saturated with oxygen produced by the decomposition of ice by cosmic rays. Therefore, large fish, for example, could survive in it. However, such a scenario is only possible if the ocean water is not too cold or salty. But not everyone agrees with this stated theory. In the 2012 issue of the journal Astrobiology, it was concluded that Europa's body of water contains a high concentration of sulfuric acid, which appeared as a result of the oxidation of the planet's interior. Accordingly, it is absolutely unsuitable for life. So what is it really like, the mysterious world of Jupiter's moon? Galileo saw it as frozen solid contaminated by radiation and covered with various types of terrain. The legendary probe became the only one to provide the most complete picture of the mysterious Jovian moon. Throughout the ages, people have frightened each other with scary stories about the end of the world. But the moment has come when these predictions may come true. Why now? Because humanity has started altering the planet so aggressively. And this activity is gradually affecting the state of the atmosphere, changing the climate, depleting the Earth's resources, turning Earth into a not very hospitable place. So we shouldn't wait for the death of the sun, when the expanded star will burn our home to ashes, or for an asteroid impact that would wipe out the possibility of organic life on the planet. We are quite capable of destroying the Earth ourselves. It's no coincidence that lately the telescopes of the world's observatories are more and more often focusing on planets similar to ours. Astronomers are actively searching for a new refuge for our descendants. And now it seems another candidate for Earth's twin has been found. The planet Ross 128b. The joy of this discovery was brought to humanity by the Chilean spectrograph HARPS, which detected the celestial body using the Doppler effect. The operating principle of the La Silla Observatory Telescope is to separate starlight into its frequency components. Modern science knows that not only do stars attract planets, but the opposite is also true. Therefore, even such small bodies can cause disturbances in the stellar spectrum. It took the spectrograph 10 years to reliably detect these slight fluctuations and thus discover Ross 128b. What kind of planet is this, and why is it considered suitable for life and even possibly habitable? At the moment, this is the second closest exoplanet after Proxima Centauri b. It is located 11 light-years away from us, which by the standards of the universe is literally the backyard of the solar system. As usual, Earth's twin has a parent star, the red dwarf Ross 128. Its mass is about only 0.17 that of the Sun, its radius is 0.19, and the age of the star is roughly the same as ours. The temperature of the star's photosphere is much lower than that of the Sun, so the habitable zone of this star is closer. Accordingly, Ross 128b fits perfectly into the Goldilocks zone. This automatically puts it on the list of planets where liquid water could exist. The first condition for the emergence of life in the forms we know. However, there is a problem. There are periodic powerful bursts of ultraviolet and X-rays, which do not promote the development of life but destroy it in a matter of seconds. There is only one consolation. According to preliminary estimates, Ross 128 is calmer than Proxima Centauri. Therefore, there is still hope that the exoplanet is suitable for human habitation. But let's return to the celestial body. What is this distant world like, the one we can't even observe directly yet, without using indirect scanning methods? The planet is located 20 times closer to its star. But because the star operates at a low temperature, the planet receives about the same amount of light as we do from the Sun. That means on the surface of Ross 128b, the temperature amplitude fluctuates within a quite acceptable range, from -60 to +20 degrees Celsius. A year on the planet is only 10 days long. But could this celestial body be completely covered by an ocean, constantly shaken by incredibly powerful tsunamis, like in one of the locations in the movie Interstellar? Scientists claim that such a scenario is unlikely. The fact is that Ross 128b has a mass of about 1.4 times that of Earth, which allows it to be classified as a terrestrial planet. Most likely one day the aliens will see a landscape of bare rocks and cliffs illuminated by the dim glow of a red dwarf. Let's voice another concern of astronomers. Objects that are so close to their parent star, in the case of Ross 128b at a distance of 0, a whole 0.05 astronomical units, or 7,479,894 kilometers, 7,479,894 kilometers, are usually pulled toward the star by tidal forces. This causes the planet to become tidally locked, always showing the same side to the star. You don't need to be an astrophysicist to get this. One side will resemble a scorched desert, while the other will be like a giant freezer. In either case, the harsh conditions are not conducive to the emergence or maintenance of life, so future colonists are unlikely to receive a warm welcome. We also have some good news to share. If we don't organize an expedition to Ross 128b in the coming centuries, it will come visit us on its own. It was recently discovered that the planet is moving toward the solar system, and in 79 years, it will be closer than Proxima Centauri. By the way, there is another nuance regarding the possible habitability of the planet, Ross 128b or other objects in this star system. The celestial body was discovered in 2017, but even before that, SETI radio telescopes detected a strange signal coming from this location. Don't rush to switch over to the news in outrage. Later, the sound was explained as noise from a geostationary satellite, but as they say, the seeds of doubt had already begun to sprout. That's why the planetary community will continue to observe. Although it's unlikely that the signal belongs to those very aliens we've been unsuccessfully searching for over the past several decades. On the other hand, due to the relative proximity of the Ross 128 system, our equipment is able to pick up fainter signals. So if there's a civilization on the planet similar to ours, not even reaching the first level on the Kardashev scale, it would be strange to expect a clearer hint of its existence from them. Unfortunately, in recent years, ordinary people have gotten used to thinking that if we are surrounded by intelligent neighbors, then at the very least, they should be building a Dyson sphere or must have fully switched to artificial intelligence. We won't settle for anything less. But it's pointless to argue about this now. Time will tell whether the enthusiastic optimists or the hardened skeptics are right. Essentially, Ross 128b is a classic example of a hypothetical Earth twin with similar mass, size, temperature conditions, and located in the habitable zone of its parent star. The search for such stellar systems and exoplanets within them has been a top priority in the past decade. This was the specific focus of the Kepler mission, and after the telescope went out of service, the launch of other similar projects is planned. So this pressing topic will not be abandoned, and in the coming years, many new objects potentially suitable for life are sure to be found. For decades, humanity has been passionate about finding signs of extraterrestrial life in distant galaxies, in other star systems, and on the planets of our own solar system. However, so far our search has not been successful. But what if we just haven't been looking in the right place? What if, before the first human appeared, there was already an advanced civilization on Earth? This might seem incredibly implausible to you, but there are some theories that might make you believe in this version. So what was on Earth before our appearance? And how did this hypothetical civilization influence human life? You've probably heard a lot of stories about how scientists searched for signs of intelligent life, for example, on some planet. However, do you know the answer to the question, how did humanity find out that we are the only intelligent beings who have lived on Earth? As you know, the Earth is 4.54 billion years old. The first living organisms appeared 3.5 billion years ago. At the same time, humanity has existed for about 200,000 years, so there is quite a long period of time when we, humans, did not exist on Earth. And all those years would have been more than enough for a civilization to arise and die out without a trace. What if there were once beings on Earth who were not like humans, but still had highly advanced technology? And we can't find any evidence of this because the legacy of that civilization was destroyed by changes in the landscape. However, now we will touch on the so-called Silurian hypothesis. According to it, at one time on Earth, specifically in the Silurian period, 443 to 419 million years ago, there lived highly developed humanoid reptiles. Then the climate conditions on Earth began to change, and these reptiles simply went into hibernation. And now these creatures might wake up to appear before a world that is already ruled by humans. It may sound like nonsense, but the interesting part is the theorizing about the search for intelligent life forms. This hypothesis is very intriguing because it shows how modern science is capable of searching for civilizations that existed on Earth billions of years before us. It's important to keep in mind that modern methods do not allow us to detect anything significant. Because if these reptiloids do exist, which we highly doubt, They are located deep beneath the Earth, which means our current technologies cannot help us study them yet. In 2018, scientists Gavin Schmidt and Adam Frank actively developed the Silurian hypothesis. They focused attention on some rather curious phenomena. For example, during the Carboniferous period, that is, 350 million years ago, there was already a sufficient amount of fossil carbon, that is, coal. In theory, that would have been enough to sustain an advanced civilization. When studying exoplanets to determine whether intelligent beings ever lived there, researchers often look at the dynamics of temperature changes, which would indicate climate change. Usually when a civilization enters the period of industrialization, the temperature on the planet rises. And the interesting thing is that on Earth 55 million years ago, the temperature increased by 5 degrees Fahrenheit, which is considered a major jump. This period was later called the Paleocene-Eocene. Of course, it's important to remember that such a temperature jump could have happened because of large amounts of carbon emissions, or because of a major volcanic eruption, or because of a meteorite impact, and so on. However, we can't know this for sure, and for us, this is almost the only evidence of the existence of an intelligent civilization before us. After all, the temperature increase could have happened, for example, because of the use of geothermal energy sources. The energy that was actively used by the civilization that ended its existence in collapse. If this is really the case, then we have more and more reason to believe that humanity will disappear in exactly the same way. It reminds me of the plot of a typical science fiction novel, where scientists discover the ruins of an ancient civilization and come to the conclusion that they became victims of their own progress. It's instructive, but detached from real scientific practice, which is forgivable for a work of fiction. Yes, the Silurian hypothesis is simply fascinating, but it doesn't have any irrefutable evidence to support it. And at this stage, it seems unlikely to us that representatives of an intelligent civilization from the past are currently in hibernation. However, the question of the existence of such a civilization is also discussed outside the Silurian hypothesis, and scientists have some arguments that may support the existence of a certain terrestrial civilization from the distant past. First of all, it's no secret that several mass extinctions of living creatures have occurred on Earth. To be precise, scientists identify 5 such extinctions. The last such catastrophe happened 65.5 million years ago. It was this event that wiped out the dinosaurs. Usually, these terrifying events happen relatively quickly, and about 75% of the inhabitants of our planet perished as a result. It is believed that the civilization of the past simply could not cope with the consequences of the catastrophe and ceased to exist. Its legacy, of course, also disappeared due to climate changes and the movement of tectonic plates. Here, you might remind us that we still lack enough evidence. And you would be right, because science must be based on a whole system of evidence. Let's suppose that after an advanced civilization, at least fragments of their cultural and scientific uniqueness remained. Modern research methods, such as radiocarbon analysis, make it possible to determine the age of fossil remains and cultural artifacts. And of course, humanity has never found anything abnormally ancient and highly developed. There is another pseudoscientific hypothesis, the ancient astronaut theory. According to it, intelligent extraterrestrial civilizations existed in the universe and maybe still exist today. And so they visited Earth and influenced the development of ancient terrestrial civilizations. And ours as well. Can you imagine? Which other civilizations besides ours? There are several theories. The Maya civilization. Despite the fact that they ceased to exist back in the 9th century, the Maya managed to stir up the whole world in 2012. After all, it was then that their calendar ended, which caused real panic among future flat earthers and reptilian fans. They saw this as a sign of the end of the world. As you can see, nothing happened. However, it is worth noting that the Mayan calendar has a complex calculation system for their era. Add to this the fact that this civilization had advanced knowledge in astronomy and mathematics. How did they acquire such information? Could someone from outside have helped them? No. There was nothing mystical or extraterrestrial about this knowledge. Instead, there was observation of celestial bodies and an interest in the surrounding world. The Indus Valley Civilization. Its cities had convenient street layouts, various, let's say, public buildings, as well as drainage systems. The script of the Indus Valley inhabitants has not been deciphered to this day. However, we do not know exactly why this civilization disappeared. Ancient Egypt. Not only did the ancient Egyptians invent the technology of mummification for their rulers, which was already very complex in itself, but the Egyptian pyramids have also been the subject of heated debates for decades. How could ancient people have built such colossal stone structures? The theory that aliens were involved has long been circulating in popular culture. Ancient Mesopotamia. The Sumerians also had advanced mathematics. They gave us inventions like the wheel and some types of transportation. Their mythology is also interesting. Their deities were called Anunnaki, which can be translated as those who came from the heavens. This gave rise to the theory that the Anunnaki actually existed, but these were not deities, but representatives of an extraterrestrial civilization who visited Earth. And perhaps it was they who gave the Sumerians such knowledge. Interestingly, beings similar to the Anunnaki also appear in other cultures. For example, the Hebrew Bible mentions certain Nephilim, who were giants. According to the Holy Scripture, these beings were the offspring of fallen angels and earthly women. In general, there was a rather popular and completely absurd theory that the Anunnaki came to Earth from the planet Nibiru. What evidence is there to support the idea that these beings are actually ancient astronauts from another planet? Basically nothing except the claims of local lunatics and pseudoscience freaks. It's worth starting with what types of evidence could even exist in this situation. The first thing that comes to mind is fossils. However, this is unlikely, since most species never became fossils at all. But don't be too quick to get disappointed, because scientists managed to find something very interesting. We're talking about the Antikythera mechanism. It was discovered back in the early 20th century on a sunken Roman ship in the Aegean Sea near the Greek island of Antikythera. The ship sank around the 2nd century BC. The mechanism itself was a system of dials and gears that helped to very accurately track the positions of celestial bodies. This way, it was possible to find out how the planets changed their positions when a solar eclipse would occur, and so on. We still haven't found out who exactly invented such an advanced device for its time. But it is well known that similar, albeit more primitive devices were already quite common in that era. They were often used by sailors of the ancient world. Undoubtedly, the topic of the most ancient civilizations, alien teachers, and underground dwellers is very, very fascinating. But despite all the speculation, our channel remains a bastion of science in the dark and superstitious world of the internet. We respect everyone's opinion, but remember that a real fact always needs evidence. And what do you think about this? Have aliens ever visited us? Who inhabited the Earth before us? Is it really possible to measure the IQ of a flat earther and a fan of the reptilian theory?